All council members present, we will resume our workshop session. The first item on the agenda is the presentation of the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, or the CAFR, for fiscal year ended June 30th, 2020 by external auditors, Mauldin and Jenkins, LLC. And I see that, well, he was here. Let's see. I suddenly everyone sort of disappeared on me. There he is. Hello, Mr. Moses.
Good evening, Mayor and council members and everyone else. Thanks for having us here to present. Let me share my screen real quick here. Let's see here. All right, can everyone see the PowerPoint?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started, and I promise not to take up too much of your time. But hopefully you all have had a chance to look at the CAFR, the management letter, and the auditor's discussion and analysis. As far as today's presentation, I'll just kind of touch on some of these highlights. And if you have any questions as I'm going through, you can stop and ask, or we can address those towards the end. All right, so just a quick update about the firm. I think since the last time we've met, we've added our 9th office in Sarasota, Florida. And so now we have, 4 in Georgia, of course, 2 in Florida, and then offices in Alabama, South Carolina, and as well as in Tennessee. And our governmental practice continues to be one of the largest niches, representing about 28% of the firm's practice. Again, we audit over 500 total governments in the Southeast. That's over 6 states, and that includes about 126 cities. As far as of course, I was the partner responsible for the overall audit engagement, going on 22 years of experience. This year I had Tim Lyons to do the quality assurance review, and he has 11 years of experience. And then down below, just some other industries that we provide services to and other services that we provide. Also including, as far as other services, we do have our governmental advisory practice, in which you all have met David Roberts, who's led a couple of projects for the city over the past year. As far as the financial statements are the responsibility of the mayor and council and management. Our responsibility is to give an opinion on those financial statements, and we've issued an unmodified opinion, which is what you will hope to get from the external and independent audit. Our opinion does include your blended component unit, BIDA, the College Park Business and Industrial Development Authority, and then also we did rely on the report of other auditors for the audit of the Atlanta Airport District Destination Marketing Organization. And that's presented within your financial statements as a discretely presented component unit. Again, we did not audit the DMO. We relied on the report of other auditors. As you can see here, the audit report date is as of December 23rd, 2020. Which means that your financial statements were timely completed and submitted to the Department of Audits, as well as to GFOA for participation in the award program. Just to kind of highlight a couple of things here. The actual field work didn't start until November 9th. And we took a hybrid approach, coming out a couple of days and then working virtually. And we issued our audit report as of December the 23rd. So that's a very quick turnaround that shows you that your team, your accounting finance department was well prepared for us to come out and do the audit. That's a quick turnaround. So issues that we may have run across, they were able to provide a quick turnaround on resolving any issues that were brought to their attention. So again, hats off to Athea and her team for being well prepared for this year's audit. And since she's been the finance director for the city, you all have had your CAFR issued in a timely manner within 6 months of year end. We also issued a report in accordance with the government auditing standards, the Yellow Book report, same date, December 23rd. We did have 2 findings, one a financial statement finding and one being a compliance finding that was cited within that report. And we'll discuss those 2 findings a little later in the presentation. As far as significant accounting policies, there were really no new accounting policies implemented during the current year, although it says GASB 88 relating to debt footnote disclosures. That was actually implemented in fiscal year 2019. As far as our relationship with management, we received full cooperation from the city's management staff and others. There were no disagreements with management on accounting issues or financial reporting matters. We did have a few audit adjustments that were proposed, and we'll discuss some of those that resulted in a finding a little later. As far as our independence, we are independent with regard to the city and its financial reporting process in accordance with AICPA professional standards. There were no fees paid to Mauldin and Jenkins for any type of management advisory services that would have impacted our independence as your external and independent auditor. All right, the next few slides kind of go over some financial trends. This first one is looking at your operating and interest revenues over the last 10 years for your electric fund and then your other proprietary funds combined. Your electric fund revenues went from 28.1 million to 29.6 million for fiscal year 2020, while your other proprietary funds revenues went from 27.4 million to about $27.7 million. While you did see increases in the revenues, as far as the bottom line, your change in net position or your net income and net loss for your electric fund, you continue to have a decrease in your net position or net loss here. 3.8 million in 2019 and versus $4.6 million decrease in your net position in 2020. While your other proprietary funds had a decrease in net position combined of about $810,000 in 2019, and you had a slight increase in your combined other proprietary funds net position of about $136,000 for fiscal year 2020. This next slide is looking at your bad debt reserves over the last 10 years.
I'm sorry, Doug.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry for interrupting you. I thought I could unmute myself quicker than I was able to. But that doesn't mean, does it, that we have our expenses in the electric fund are higher than our revenues? It has to do with money that is being transferred out of that account for other purposes. That's correct, right?
Well,
I don't want to create the impression for those out in TV land that the electric fund is actually losing money. It is. I don't believe it is losing money. Is that correct?
Well, actually, for June 30, 2020, your operating loss, you did have an operating loss of about $3.5 million. So your total operating expenses for the electric fund was in fact higher than revenues. It was 33 million versus your revenues of 29.5 million. So it actually did operate at a loss.
For June 30th, through June 30th, 2020.
Through June 30, 2020, correct.
Through June 30, 2020. Now we've adjusted our rates.
Yes.
Right.
But I thought there were some issues with the electric funds that we had transferred money out. I mean, net position isn't it's a static state. It's not a dynamic state. It has to do with the balances, what you have and what you owe. And had we not transferred money out of the electric fund would not have a net position of negative at all, probably.
Well, you did transfer out this fiscal year 2020 about $1.1 million, which resulted in the change in net position or your bottom line of your net position decreasing by a total of $4.6 million.
Right, but I'm just saying based on past history.
Correct. Had the city not made any transfers out or loan other funds, these advances in the past, yes, you would not have had this decrease in your net position.
Okay, thank you.
But just to make it clear, we did have a decrease in the net position since I've been here because of the operating loss of expenditures exceeding revenues. And that's outside of the transfers. So for the past 3 years, I believe we've had a reduction in net position just because of operating income.
Correct.
Okay, good point. Then, so what you're saying is we have had expenses higher than revenue, and
Yes,
that's
sir.
why we adjusted the power rates.
Exactly.
Correct.
So we would
Thank you.
expect in this, Ms. Fuller Bradley, you are invisible.
Yeah, I am.
Oh, okay. All right.
Sorry.
I just want to make sure that you knew that you were invisible.
I,
But so we would anticipate based upon the adjustments we made to correct that operational that our operations exceeding our revenues
exactly.
in the upcoming fiscal year or in
Yes,
this
ma'am.
present fiscal year. Sorry.
The increase in the utility rates plus, it's my understanding you guys are now using a third party for, collection of your bad debts.
Turn the light off.
And so
Ms.
that,
Fuller Bradley, you're not muted.
I'll move here in just a second.
okay.
Sorry,
And
Mr. Moses, go ahead.
yes, no problem. So that should help too on these delinquent accounts, having that third party collection agency to kind of work on behalf of the city to try to collect on some of that. And so hopefully that plus the increase in your electric rates should kind of help this moving forward.
Yeah, we've seen the increase in the rates, how that's made things change already. So I think that's been a very good positive.
Okay.
Right. Something occurred to me just now. We have CARES Act money to enable people to pay their past bills. The county is coming out with an additional fund that is going to take care of rental expense and also can be applied to utilities. And that's starting this month.
Actually, today.
So if we were to take people who were up for collection agency collections, could that money not be used to satisfy collection agencies collections that have come out of COVID-19? Or would they have aged enough that they'd be in collection agency at that time?
No, we normally work with the customer while they are still a resident of College Park, but normally they aren't sent to the collection agency until they leave a balance on the account.
Okay. I was hoping.
Okay.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Yes, Mr. Richardson, go right ahead.
Yeah, you need to footnote, there was a contract default starting in 2017 that was a major contributor to those extra expenses.
Are we talking about with the city of Sandersville?
Yeah.
Okay.
So today is about 7 million.
Yes.
Okay.
Good point.
Any other questions on that previous slide? Okay. So this schedule or this chart here is showing your bad debt reserves for your electric and water and sewer fund. And you see the electric bad debt reserves went from 7.4 million to $7.9 million in 2020. That represents about a $500,000 increase, which is reflected as a bad debt expense in the current year for fiscal year 2020. And then your water and sewer bad debt reserves went from 1.5 million to about $1.6 million. So that was about a $100,000 increase as well. The next slide is looking at your fund balance for your general fund over the last 10 years, as well as for your combined fund balance for your other governmental funds. And your fund balance for your general fund did decrease from 23 million down to 21.3 million, while your other governmental funds fund balance went from $17.6 million down to about 14.7 million.
Mr. Moses, how much of that is actually cash?
Good question. So for your general fund, it's very liquid. So your fund balance for your general fund was 21 million. You had about almost right at 7 million in cash and cash equivalents. And then you had investments of about 7 million 7.2 million as well. So a little bit over $14 million of your fund balance is very liquid. And then you had about 7 million that's due from other funds.
Okay.
Mhm.
So about 2/3 of it.
Yes. Good question. All right.
Doug, we also, I just want to point out, because I know we're going to be coming before the council next meeting with an update of that 14 million that Doug just told you about 2 million is in liabilities that were due at year end as well. So
Yes.
we normally back that out of the cash basically to say, okay, this is pretty much what's available, the availability of that cash when you're looking at that. Correct,
So
Doug?
you're saying 12 million instead of 14?
Yeah. How much was the liabilities that year in?
He had about 2.6 million of payable.
Okay, so
Yeah.
yeah, so I would back out 2.6 million of that 14 million as far as what you have available.
Right. Okay. Next slide is looking at your fund balance as a percentage of total expenditures for the last 10 years for your general fund and then all of your governmental funds combined. And again, a good rule of thumb is to have 2 to 3 months reserve or anywhere from 16 to 25%. And so you all continue to exceed that percentage for your general fund. It came in at 64% as of June 30, 2020. And that represents about a 7.7 month reserve. And then when you combine all of your funds, that's about a 93% reserve. So, you know, again, this is just a snapshot in time. Doesn't mean that you're at this level throughout the year, but at June 30, 2020, that's a pretty good ratio to have.
And that's Mr. Moses, that in regard to the general fund, that's with that 21 million, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. All right. All right, so the next couple of slides kind of go over the findings. And this year, you know, we had this finding cited as fiscal year end closeout procedures. Now, I will let you all know that, yes, this was a similar finding last year as far as the title, but as far as the specific items that was noted last year within the year end closeout procedures, none of those were repeats. These are kind of new things that kind of popped up during the audit. But again, like I alluded to earlier, to how I look at things is how quickly can management respond to things that are brought to their attention. And overall, we had 21 journal entries that were made over the time frame of us receiving the trial balances beginning of November to the time that we issued our report. So anything that came to their attention, they were able to jump on it quickly and get things resolved versus like we experienced in previous years, you know, prior to your new finance director being on board, you know, things kind of drug out for several months, which resulted in the audit not being done timely. But these are things that was noted during the audit that management was able to jump on real quickly and provide the necessary journal entries to correct those balances and things of that nature. So this first one deals with road resurfacing costs that was incorrectly capitalized. In accordance with the accounting and auditing standards, those costs of routine resurfacing of roads should not be capitalized. It should be expense. And so we had to make that adjustment at the government-wide level for your governmental activities capital assets. The other item here deals with deposits payable, where we had to make an entry in the electric fund to increase the deposits payable in revenue and reduce the revenue account at year end. And then in the convention center fund, we had to, in looking at the receivables at year end, we noticed that some amounts were deemed uncollectible. And so we did have to make an entry to increase your allowance for doubtful accounts and reflect a bad debt expense of about $219,000 in the convention center fund. And then the last item, we noted that cash was in the evidence room. The police department was not being reflected in the city's general ledger. And so we had to do some procedures to determine what the cash balance was at year end. And that amount was about $56,000. So we do encourage the department to work with the police department to ensure that they're providing the information on the monthly basis to reflect what the cash on hand is, and make sure that's reflected in the city's general ledger and the state and drug fund.
So, Mr. Moses, has that been a recurring issue, or?
It wasn't a repeat finding. I believe maybe it wasn't reflected in the prior year, and maybe the balance, maybe it was an oversight, and maybe the cash balance wasn't this high. So this might have been an issue in the past, but it may have not been brought, to management's attention at this level. It seems like I recall maybe having a management point about it in the previous years where it wasn't that significant, but when we inquired about it this year, and the balance was much higher than it was in previous years.
So, Ms. Fuller Bradley, what's the fix on that?
The police department basically has to send us a schedule each month, so we can adjust if need be, depending on the balance. But we need to keep track of it. The police department keeps track of it, but we need the report that shows how they're keeping track on it each month from them. They have been advised and aware of what we need from them. So we're working with the chief to get that report on a monthly basis.
So moving forward, we should be good on this particular issue?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
All right. All right, so the second finding is a compliance finding. And this has been a finding in the past. I can't remember if it was a finding last year. It might have been a finding 2 years ago. But this pertains to your loan agreement with GEFA, the Georgia Environmental Finance Authority. And they require you to have a fixed charge coverage ratio of 1.05. And this year that fell below that ratio, that threshold, to about 0.63. So we do, recommend the city kind of monitor your that coverage ratio to ensure that you're in compliance with the loan agreement with GEFA. Like you all alluded to earlier, with the increase in billing rates, that should help as well. And then also, your collection efforts on any bad debt reserves, that would help too. If your bad debt reserves don't increase, then you don't have to reflect that that increase as a bad debt expense in the current period, which would affect your ratio. So hopefully this won't be a repeat going forward.
So in the report, in accordance with the government auditing standards, our response was that we concur with the finding. What are we doing to make sure that this doesn't happen again?
What has to happen is we have to calculate the revenues versus the expenses each quarter, just to identify whether or not we are short at that point in time. But I don't think, unless the council can, this has to be capped. We have to catch this prior to us adopting the budget to ensure that we have enough revenue budgeted to exceed the debt to ratio rate of 1.5. Because during the year, once you catch it, if you're not meeting the need, the council would have to increase the rate or reduce the expenses.
Right.
So
we have to continually monitor this. Right now we're at 1.4. I did a calculation today. So
1.4 or 1.04?
1.4.
Okay.
We have to be at, we're at 1.4. So we are fine as of today. So.
Okay.
And you said we need to do this quarterly?
I would say quarterly.
Yeah, I just looked at the statistical section, page 112, and it was an issue back in 2017 as well.
Yeah, that was 2017. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
All right, so now we move to the management points. We did have 4 management points. And again, this one is one that we'll continue to repeat when you look at your proprietary activities and cash flow needs due to the large amount of outside financing and internal financing with your convention center fund, BIDA, as well as the GICC Arena Fund. Encourage you all to kind of look at this and your cash flow needs, which you all are doing that. I believe you all are looking at doing a refunding to kind of free up some cash flows to weather the storm during this pandemic. And so those are the things that, you have to kind of consider when you're looking at the amount of debt the city has here. And like I said, in light of being in a pandemic and things being shut down at your convention center and things of that nature, I think you're all making the right call there. All right. Second management point deals with the customer deposits. Again, this is a repeat in terms of not having a separate bank account for your customer deposits, and which would tie with your customer deposits liability amount as well. Since the city kind of moved to a pool cash environment, you're not showing that as a separate cash account set aside for your customer deposits. So something to consider moving forward.
Are we going to do that?
Not at this time, ma'am.
Any
That's
reason?
about $3 million. I would have to put in a separate account. Yeah.
And so right now that money is where?
Pool cash with all the other dollars.
Okay.
But there
They
is
have-
about $2.5 million in investments. So outside of the what's currently stashed, that was currently in the pool cash account.
Well, can't you make that account a pure investment account and just put the money into that so that at least it's earning interest?
Yes, sir, it is. So 2.5 million, we would have to move another. Initially at the start of the year, we did have about, I want to say 5 million, but we've moved money from the investment account. But at year end, we'll make sure there's about $2.8 million, whatever the whatever the general ledger shows, we'll make sure there's is close to that amount sitting in the investment account.
Will that satisfy you, Doug, if it just shows up at the year end?
Yes, and if that amount ties to what the city is showing as the customer deposits payable at year end, outside of any interest that's earned on the investments, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, and then the other item here is a whistleblower hotline, something that we encourage you all to consider putting in place where the city employees and others can anonymously report any instances of potential fraudulent activity that may be happening within the city.
Dr. Baker, I think you're working on that by the end of the first quarter. Is that correct? I know that he's got great things to say if he had a good connection. Ms. Miller, can you assist?
I do know that he and Mr. Moody are working on it. They're looking at 3 different companies. So we should have one by the end of the quarter.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. And this last item is not a reflection on, it's not a reflection on the city of College Park. I actually had the same issue at another client who is participating in this IGA with the city of Atlanta, where pertaining to the water project, which the city of Atlanta was sending these invoices late to the participating cities for work that had been completed, several months prior. Like for you all, in our, and I appreciate Thea reaching out to us when the invoice came in. I mean, we had already drafted the statements and she said, hey, this looks like a very large amount in which the work was completed by the city of Atlanta from, back in from April to June. And so we had to make that adjustment in the city's financial statements to reflect that amount. So we are encouraging our clients who participate in the IGA with the city of Atlanta, just try to periodically reach out to them just to kind of nudge them to send those invoices in a more timely manner so that you can reflect that in your general ledger and financial statements in a timely manner.
Are you finding that this is happening, in a lot of different cities that you all look at with COVID and everything that's going on right now, that a lot of these invoices are getting there late?
That might be the reason, because I don't recall this being an issue prior to the pandemic. But like for instance, City of Hateville had the same issue of, I think even theirs went back a little later than what you all are showing here. I think some of theirs went back to 2019, which was prior to the pandemic. So
Okay.
I think it's maybe some other issues that are going on there as well as it relates to the City of Atlanta pertaining to these invoices. So again, just recommend just kind of periodically just reach out to them and just ask them if they can, submit any of those invoices that pertains to the City of College Park, where you have to reflect your proportionate share of that water project, so that you can ensure that it's being captured timely. All right, and moving on to new GASB pronouncements. This couple I want to mention here. GASB 84 deals with fiduciary activities. This will be applicable for June 30, 2021. And so the main thing here is that you all have an agency fund for your municipal court activities, which under the current standards, you're only required to show a balance sheet, assets and liabilities, and that's it. But when this standard becomes applicable, you will also have to show an income statement for your agency fund as well. So you reflect revenues and expenses, expenditures, and then equity, just like you would for your general fund or a special revenue fund. And so we'll get with management and make sure the city is in a position to properly implement this standard for the current year that you're in. GASB statement number 87 deals with leases. Again, we continue to encourage all of our clients to make sure you're going through all of your lease agreements and arrangements now. Don't wait until it's time to implement it, because a lot of those leases where you may have reflected as operating leases, you might need to start recording those as a liability under the full accrual basis of accounting. So it's best to kind of start now gathering those arrangements and having it, readily available to be able to implement this standard at the beginning of fiscal year 2022. The other one here I want to point out, GASB statement number 91 deals with conduit debt. And again, this is, when you issue debt on behalf of others where you don't have to reflect it as a liability in your financial statements. You only have to disclose that conduit debt in your footnotes. This will be applicable for June 30, 2023. A lot of governments, they've issued this conduit debt, several years, back. And a lot of times they run into problems in trying to determine what the outstanding balance is. And under the current standard, when that's the case, you can just disclose what the issuance amount of that debt was. But when this standard becomes applicable, you no longer can do that. You have to disclose what the outstanding balance is at that fiscal year end. So we are encouraging our clients to almost treat it like it's your debt, where you're confirming what the balance is, so that you know what it is at year end, and you won't have to be trying to chase this down during the audit process. All right, and last thing just want to mention here is that we continue to offer free continuing education classes to our clients. And since we've been in the pandemic, this has gone to a virtual process, and I think our clients are really liking it, doing virtual. You can see the various topics that we kind of cover. I think we have one coming up this week on, preparing CAFRs and common things to look for as far as, inefficiencies and things of that nature in doing these CAFRs. And so that's a class that's coming up this week. And your staff and management has participated in those classes and continue to do so going forward. And so that kind of concludes my presentation. I can address any other further questions that you all have. But again, great job, management staff and others, for doing a great job this year in a pandemic, and they didn't miss a beat. I can't say that for all of my clients, but you all did a great job.
Well, thank you, Doug.
All right.
I have some questions on the CAFR itself.
Okay. All right, Councilman Clay, go right ahead.
On the CAFR, page 62, we're talking about the pension liability.
Yes, sir.
And down near the bottom, it talks about that the liability between 6/30 of 19 and 6/30 of 20 has gone from 19.8 million to 27.6 million. Can you explain why that is? And is this good or bad? Or is this an external influence in the law? Or is something happened that I'm not aware of?
No, actually, it depends on the investments, what the market value of the investments are during the time of the measurement date for evaluating your total pension liability. So fluctuations in the market has an effect on the calculation of what your pension liability will be. And so again, there are no major changes. I mean, your discount rate, it did decrease from 7.375% to, it went from 3.5 from the prior year to 7.375% in the current year, or at the measurement date for doing your evaluation. So yeah, that typically happens. Changes in certain calculations as it relates to the discount rate. There are some other assumption changes too, when you look at the top here, that may affect that calculation as well. But one of the biggest thing is what the market value of your investments and the GMA, what the investments are at the time when they do their evaluation, will have the biggest effect on that calculation.
Okay. I guess I'm good at that point. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
That was it?
That was it.
Oh, okay.
I had some others, but they got answered off the presentation. So I'm
Okay.
good.
Fair enough. Any other questions from the body?
No, I just want to thank them for doing a good job. I know it's been a tough year to do it virtually and a lot of other situations, but appreciate your time and the effort, especially of our people to get everything done in a timely manner, and hats off to everybody concerned.
Yes.
Amen to that.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely. The whole team made some Herculean lifts.
Althea, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you all.
Any other questions? Hearing none, we will move on to the second and final item in the workshop session. And that is, see, Ms. Moore, I'm giving you time to get it up on the screen, but that's okay. I got it. Monthly progress report regarding strategic planning activities. Mr. Hicks, I believe that you'll be heading up this conversation.
Yes, ma'am. Madam Mayor, Council, good evening. We are excited once again to give you our progress on what we're doing in terms of the strategic goals. I've got a couple of bullet points here. The strategic goals, the core values, and we're going to be given an update this evening by our public safety and security team. As you know, each one of these strategic goals have committee chairs, and we will be bringing these committee chairs before you so you all can get an update on what they're doing with their particular committees. I wanted to put the 5 goals up there again because I want us to make sure that we understand exactly what these goals are. So each time we give an update, you will always see these goals. You're going to always see the core values, because I want to make sure that the public and the staff and the directors all know that we own these. Okay. This particular slide is really our virtual background, Mayor and Council. I actually wanted to put this up there so you all can see that we own these now. All of the department heads have bought into what we're doing. You can see that virtual backgrounds are up. And the next slide, I just put the definitions there on each one: service, respect, equity, inclusion, innovation, integrity, advancement. Those are our core values. We own them. As you can see, based on our virtual backgrounds, we have bought into it. And also, I also sent out an email to the department heads asking them about which one of these core values that we want to use as a theme for March. And I got a few comments back, and the overwhelming response was service. So we haven't officially adopted that yet. I'll send that back out to the department heads and the staff to make sure everybody's on board. So we may adopt one of these for the month of March. And this is just a charge for all of the different teams. I wanted to put that back. Last but certainly not least, I'm going to pass the baton now over to Chief Elmore and Chief Williford. They're going to give you an update on what they're doing with their committee.
Michael, can I ask one question?
Yes.
The packet that we got only has the background slide and the core value slide in it. Am I missing something, or does no one else on council have those additional slides?
That's all that I've got.
That's all that I've got as well.
I don't think he added them because every meeting we just bring back up what the core values are. So we figure visual will give you remembrance, but we can add them to the packet. But it was not our intention to put them.
He's going to talk about he's going to have the team report. That's what's missing from this. Okay. The thing that's different, that is unique to this meeting, is what's actually missing from our packet. That's not good.
Okay. Yeah, okay. I certainly stand corrected for that. I sent this to Chevelle, and I should have put it in Minitrack for it to be uploaded to the package. I'll remember that going forward.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Yes, well, since the inception of the Public Safety and Security team, we noticed that one of our first objectives was to update the emergency preparedness and hazard mitigations plans for the city. And but initially what we had to do was hire a emergency manager, which we were fortunate enough because Andrea Smalls, who's working at the GICC, has taken over that position, and she's doing a great job at it. Initially back in, so it was August, September of last year, with that position, we had to create a job description and also solicit data from other sources and on a salary for that position. HR and the previous city manager worked on that, and all of that was complete as of November of 2020. One of the goals, or short-term goals that we want to work on, is the development of the COOP plan, which is the continuity of operations plan, and also the hazard mitigation plan. Now, the COOP plan is not as large of a document that we have to put together, but we're given a date of August of 2021 when that plan should be complete. The hazard mitigation plan, or the emergency operations plan, we're going to give it a few more months after that. So we're looking at April of 2022 to have that plan complete. It's going to take a lot of work, and with the team, we're all going to assist Ms. Smalls in that task, and I think it's something that we could accomplish. Again, the anticipated completion dates, we've hired an emergency manager. The COOP plan is anticipated to be completed by August of this year. And the hazard mitigation plan, we're looking at anywhere from, if I'm not mistaken, we're looking at April of 2022 on that. And that is all I have, and I think Chief Williford is up.
May I ask a question about both the COOP and the hazard mitigation plans? Can you just give us some broad brushstrokes about what will be entailed in those plans, and and how that's going to better situate us
Yes.
for things that come along.
Yes. Well, with the COOP plan will assist us if there's let's say a disaster where a tornado comes through the city of College Park and God forbid wipes out all the buildings. And we do not have a place to set up and I'm talking about all of the departments. So we would have to find an alternative location to operate. And whether that's on the other side of town or that would include working in some of the other cities in East Point or city of South Fulton. We would have to find some other places to relocate where we could still continue to operate our essential functions of the city. With the hazard mitigation plan, basically what that will do is it would assist us in identifying some of the hazards throughout the city. And if something does happen, we would have various departments that would, and department directors who would have certain responsibilities in case something large happens. Whether a plane goes down or the train that goes through the city, CSX, if it, say, overturns on the tracks here in the city and we have to evacuate. But each department will have a specific task as far as to help mitigate that hazard that's going on within the city.
Good.
Chief, this is vitally important work.
Yes.
I mean, it's at the core of what we do and how we continue to serve the residents and the other stakeholders in this community. So I'm certainly grateful that this committee is undertaking this, because I can't overstate how important this is.
It's been needed. Yes, ma'am.
So thank you. But I'm sorry, Chief Williford, I think you get the next. I'm sorry. Did anybody else have any questions about?
No, I'd like to say, I think we need to be prepared. If we're not prepared and it hits, then you're dead in the water. So you need to be prepared. You need to have a game plan, where to go, what to do, who does what. It's a great program. So again, thanks very much.
Thank you.
All right, Chief.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. How are you?
Good evening.
Good.
One of our objectives in the Public Safety Committee is to use a smart cities approach to protect public health, reduce crime, and support emergency preparedness. So on the agenda later on tonight is the request for approval to purchase 9 more flock license plate readers. That will be in addition to the 17 we already have. So our goal here is to, as we can funding close gaps within the city, to be able to cover as much territory as we can. So we've chosen 9 locations to place cameras. Many of these will be at city limits entry points or close to city limits entry points, and in some of our hot spots. We expect they could be operational by as early as April 1st, but I'm thinking we're probably looking more like the middle of April to have them up and running. And that is it for my part for now.
All right. Thank you. Any questions?
No, just I'm really happy to see the LPR cameras. They've been successful on the south side from what I've seen. And now that we get them on the north side and the west side, it's looking good.
And let me add that we also have access to cameras from the city of South Fulton, from Hateville, and from East Point, as well as Clayton County. Clayton County and the Aerotropolis have partnered to put cameras down in the Clayton County section of the city. And so we're ours plus theirs gives us a pretty broad coverage inside the city.
So that
How
means
have
that,
they
that
been-
this area is not a good place to go to if you've stolen a car.
That's correct.
How have they been maintenance wise? Have they been pretty reliable?
They've been great. And the great thing about Flock is we report a camera down, or if they see one down on their back end system, they come right out and repair it or replace the camera as quickly as possible. We don't have to worry about calling a service provider and paying service charges and all that. It's part of the fee.
Fantastic. Any other questions?
Nope.
All right. Anything else from the committee, Mr. Hicks?
I know, Mayor and Council, we just want to let you all know that we're making great progress. We're working together. I mean, the word silo has been erased from our definition altogether, as evident by the public safety and security team.
Great to hear that.
Great.
Really great to hear that.
Fantastic. All right. Does anyone else have any issues that we need to bring up in the workshop session? Hearing none, we will see everyone at 7:30 then. Thanks so much.
Yeah.